In the heart of a war-torn battlefield where silence is shattered by the roar of steel and fire, a tense showdown unfolds between Russian armored forces and fiercely determined Ukrainian defenders. What begins as a coordinated tank assault quickly turns into a deadly dance of missiles, drones, and resistance. With every second, the stakes rise and survival hangs by a thread. This isn't just another military encounter. This is modern warfare at its most raw, relentless, and real. Let's dive into this intense frontline encounter, where technology, tactics, and sheer courage collide in the heat of battle. In the heart of a war-torn battlefield where silence is shattered by the roar of steel and fire, a tense showdown unfolds between Russian armored forces and fiercely determined Ukrainian defenders. What begins as a coordinated tank assault quickly turns into a deadly dance of missiles, drones, and resistance. With every second, the stakes rise, and survival hangs by a thread. This isn't just another military encounter. This is modern warfare at its most raw, relentless, and real. Let's dive into this intense frontline encounter, where technology, tactics, and sheer courage collide in the heat of battle. The morning air hung heavy over the silent fields of eastern Ukraine. The wind carried with it the distant hum of engines, low at first, almost like a memory of thunder, but growing steadily louder. In the wavering heat rising from the charred grass, silhouettes began to take shape. Russian tanks, menacing in their dark green armor, slowly crept forward, their steel hulls grinding the dirt as they advanced toward the Ukrainian defensive lines. These were no random maneuvers. This was a deliberate and focused armored assault. The Ukrainian troops, dug deep into makeshift trenches, had known this moment was coming. For days, they had intercepted chatter, observed movement through drone surveillance, and felt the growing tension in the air like a storm preparing to break. Now, that storm had arrived. The lines between life and death were measured in meters as the trenches were dangerously close to the expected point of contact. 4 key Russian vehicles were spearheading the operation: 2 main battle tanks, an armored personnel carrier, APC, and an MTLB, a Soviet-era multi-purpose tracked vehicle packed with ammunition and supplies. Accompanying this ground assault were 2 Russian artillerymen stationed far to the rear, methodically lobbing shells toward Ukrainian positions to weaken defenses and scatter formations. One of the Russian tanks suddenly released a thick plume of smoke, a tactic intended to conceal their approach and confuse the defenders. The grey haze began to crawl across the battlefield, blotting out shapes and turning the terrain into a confusing maze of shadows and sounds. But the Ukrainian soldiers had trained for this. A team positioned behind a hillock worked feverishly to ready their Javelin anti-tank missile launcher. They had one shot to make a difference. As the convoy edged closer, the enemy vehicles opened fire, unleashing explosive shells and bursts of automatic fire at perceived Ukrainian strongholds. Dirt and debris flew into the air with every impact, but the Ukrainian defenders were not passive. They returned fire with rifles, machine guns, and anti-tank grenades. And then, with steady hands and locked eyes, the Ukrainian soldier launched the Javelin. The missile soared into the air, guided by heat and precision. Within moments, it struck the side of the leading tank, erupting into a fireball that rocked the earth. The entire Russian convoy screeched to a halt. Panic set in. Through the smoke and confusion, crew members from the damaged tank scrambled out and sprinted toward the MTLB, likely hoping to grab emergency supplies or seek shelter. But in their haste, they made a fatal error. Another Ukrainian soldier had already lined up a second shot. This time, the missile didn't just hit. It obliterated. The blast tore through metal and flesh alike, turning the vehicle into a smoldering wreck. High above the battlefield, Ukrainian drone operators received their orders: engage immediately. Tiny black figures launched into the air, silent and deadly. FPV drones, first-person view guided weapons, hurtled toward their targets with deadly accuracy. At the same time, a Ukrainian tank, positioned miles away but with a clear line of fire, roared to life. Its barrel rotated, locked on the advancing Russian APC, and fired. The impact was devastating. Another hit, another crippled machine. The Russian advance faltered. For a brief moment, it seemed the momentum had shifted, but danger still loomed. A Russian tank, still functional, stayed behind the front line and continued its bombardment. Each shot landed closer and closer to the Ukrainian trench line. It wasn't just steel and fire they had to worry about now. New threats emerged from above. A Russian surveillance drone zipped across the tree line, scanning for Ukrainian positions. It moved fast, dipping and swerving like a mechanical bird of prey. But Ukrainian spotters caught it just in time. Small arms fire erupted skyward, attempting to bring it down before it relayed valuable coordinates. In the chaos, one soldier's rifle jammed, a haunting reminder of how even a tiny malfunction could be fatal. Then the battle escalated even further. Cluster munitions rained from the sky, exploding in deadly patterns meant to scatter and injure anything in their path. Simultaneously, more drones joined the fray, some carrying bombs, others armed with cameras and explosives. One drone dropped a grenade directly onto an advancing APC. Another FPV drone struck a Russian tank head-on. The impact set off a secondary explosion, igniting the onboard ammo and engulfing the machine in flames. The APC exploded with such ferocity that it left a blackened crater in its wake. Shrapnel flew in all directions, and a towering plume of smoke rose into the sky. The camera feed from a nearby drone caught the entire thing. A flash, a shockwave, and then silence. But the Russians were not giving up. A second wave of armored vehicles pushed forward. A new tank and an additional APC tried to breach Ukrainian lines from a different angle. Drone operators on the Ukrainian side re-engaged, adjusting their positions to track the fresh targets. Russian troops began dismounting from one of the APCs, moving tactically toward the tree line, unaware they were being watched. Suddenly, another FPV drone was launched. It swerved and spun in mid-air, dodging tree branches and enemy fire, then struck the APC dead center. The vehicle screeched to a halt as flames burst from its interior. The advancing soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to push forward or fall back. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian infantryman emerged from a camouflaged position near the forest's edge. Standing tall despite the danger, he raised his rifle and fired. A clear message: they would not surrender. This was their land, and they would defend it with everything they had. The Russian tank continued its barrage, attempting to provide cover for its retreating comrades. Several more shells landed near the Ukrainian position, but none penetrated the makeshift defenses. Reinforced armor and quick repositioning saved lives. Ukrainian drone operators worked furiously, guiding multiple drones toward the tank. Each drone was armed with different payloads. Some carried anti-tank grenades, others small but powerful shaped charges. One by one, they struck. Although the tank's armor resisted the initial impacts, the continuous pressure began to take its toll. Finally, the Russian crew could hold no more. With their vehicles disabled, their infantry scattered, and drones closing in from every angle, they abandoned their positions. Some attempted to flee on foot, others lay motionless in the wake of the destruction. The battlefield fell eerily silent again, save for the crackling of fires and the distant whir of returning drones. The Ukrainian flag still fluttered atop the tree line. The attack had failed, decisively and without question. As the sun rises over a scorched and restless battlefield, tension brews like a gathering storm. Ukrainian forces, alert and battle-hardened, prepare to face yet another wave of Russian assault. What unfolds is not just a firefight, It's a calculated, high-tech war of nerve and precision. With every drone launched and every decision made under fire, Ukraine's defenders show the world that courage, strategy, and unity can defy even the most aggressive invasions. This is the front line like you've never seen it, raw, relentless, and real. The battlefield had not yet recovered from the previous day's chaos when yet another wave of aggression surged from the eastern horizon. Russian forces, determined to break through, began pushing their armoured vehicles forward under the grey skies. But what they didn't know was that every inch of their movement was already under scrutiny. Hidden among the trees and brush, Ukrainian scouts tracked every movement. Their eyes, enhanced by drones and sensors, spotted the enemy's silhouette long before the first shell ever landed. From their camouflaged outposts, Ukrainian soldiers held steady. The order was clear: stay silent, observe, and strike with precision. As the enemy crept closer, the Ukrainian commander leaned forward and calmly issued instructions. Wait until you see them. Aim true. Fire when ready. His voice was steady, cutting through the noise like a metronome guiding a symphony of resistance. The Russian tank, unaware it had become a sitting duck, reached the edge of the tree line. It was then that a drone, humming like a mechanical wasp, dove in from above. The explosive pierced the tank's thick armor like a hot knife through butter. Within seconds, flames burst through the vehicle's roof, swallowing it in smoke and fury.
Nearby, an APC had already been reduced to a twisted, blackened carcass of steel. Its occupants had no chance. The Ukrainian line had held. Amid the smoke and shrapnel, a young Ukrainian soldier spotted an opportunity. "Cover me," he shouted, already moving. With coordinated discipline, his unit provided suppressing fire as he sprinted to a new position. There, he set up a surprise strike. Another drone, another chance to deal a devastating blow. The tactic worked flawlessly, and they repeated it again. Shells landed dangerously close to Russian formations, scattering their troops and damaging their morale. As the skirmish unfolded, the last armored vehicle in the Russian convoy made itself known. It was a Rakushka APC, a heavily fortified vehicle known for durability. A Ukrainian drone raced to meet it, landing a direct hit. But to the soldiers' surprise, the Rakushka kept rolling. It barreled forward like a wounded beast refusing to die. A second drone followed, this time striking its tracks. The vehicle jolted to a stop, wheels grinding into the dirt. That was all the opening the Ukrainian operators needed. A third drone flew directly into the interior compartment. A brilliant flash erupted, and the Rakushka was done for. Back at the tree line, a Ukrainian soldier lobbed several grenades in a quick succession, using the brief distraction caused by drone strikes. Another comrade provided covering fire. Moments later, a recon drone scanned the impact zone and confirmed the kills. "Good throw," the operator muttered with satisfaction. The grenades had done their job perfectly. The sun had barely set on this chaos when the next day brought new horrors. Two more Russian APCs rumbled down a dirt road, seeking a flanking path through what they assumed was unguarded terrain. But once again, Ukrainian drone teams had anticipated the maneuver. They had set up shop in a secluded trench system, hidden under thick foliage, giving them both concealment and command over the battlefield. The first drone operator adjusted his goggles, checked the feed, and released his drone into the sky. It soared low, weaving through the treetops until it spotted its target. With a rapid plunge, it smashed into the first APC. The vehicle lurched and caught fire. Moments later, a secondary explosion, likely from internal ammo, turned it into a rolling inferno. As if scripted by fate, the second APC hit a landmine almost immediately after the first was struck. The explosion was thunderous, hurling the armored beast several feet off the ground before slamming it back into the earth. Russian soldiers scrambled, dazed and injured, only to find themselves exposed. Just then, a third APC came into view. Ukrainian forces had anticipated this fallback route. "There it is," the drone pilot whispered. Another FPV drone zipped forward and crashed into its engine compartment. A column of smoke spiraled upward. The convoy, once a proud symbol of aggression, had become a graveyard of steel and smoke. From the sky, the footage showed 3 APCs engulfed in flame, scattered like broken toys across the battlefield. Ukrainian operators monitored the scene carefully. One final drone was launched, not to strike, but to ensure total neutralization. It hovered above the wreckage and dropped a final payload, sealing the fate of any remaining threat. This assault, though intense, was just one among many happening along the front line. Yet its significance was undeniable. Russian attempts to reclaim territory were now being routinely blunted, not by overwhelming force, but by agility, intelligence, and precision from Ukrainian defense teams. The camera cut to another location, another hill, another battlefield. This time, the Javelin anti-tank missile would play center stage. Ukrainian lookouts spotted enemy units advancing. Swiftly, they coordinated artillery teams and drone operators. Artillery fired the opening salvo. Thunderous cracks filled the air as the earth shook under their might. Before the dust settled, a drone zipped into the frame, heading straight for an exposed enemy transport. The next few minutes were chaos and brilliance intertwined. Explosions rippled across the tree lines. Tactical coordination between recon units and artillery ensured every strike landed with devastating effect. The Javelin team, positioned on elevated ground, took their shot. The missile spiraled into the sky, then dove downward with heat-seeking fury. It landed square on its mark, igniting a final vehicle and ending yet another wave of Russian aggression.
Modern warfare is no longer fought by brute strength alone. It's a battlefield ruled by strategy, speed, and cutting-edge technology. In this gripping engagement, Ukrainian defenders unleash the full force of their drone fleet and precision missiles to stop a relentless Russian advance. From explosive ambushes in the forest to expertly coordinated artillery strikes, every moment showcases the sheer resolve and adaptability of Ukraine's forces. Let's break down this intense battle where each strike tells a story, and survival is earned through every decision made under fire.
From a different vantage point on the battlefield, the unfolding chaos reveals a clearer picture. A Russian armored column inches forward, its lead tank visibly damaged from an earlier strike. Smoke curls from the vehicle's side panels, yet the convoy pushes on with mechanical determination. The scene speaks volumes. Despite their losses, the Russian forces refuse to halt. But Ukraine is ready. In the dense greenery lining the road, a Ukrainian soldier lies in wait. Timing his movement perfectly, he steps out of the underbrush, raises a Javelin missile launcher, and takes careful aim. The missile launches with a thunderous whoosh, slicing through the air and smashing directly into the advancing tank. The explosion rocks the area, flames erupt, and while the tank is clearly wounded, it stubbornly continues moving forward, now escorted by a second armored vehicle. However, that resilience is short-lived. As the Russian convoy attempts to regroup, the internal damage becomes apparent. The tank loses control and halts. The Russians, realizing they need to evacuate, attempt to extract the crew, but a Ukrainian drone is already circling overhead. It delivers a devastating strike, cutting off the escape and sealing their fate. In a panic, one APC peels off from the column, abandoning its infantry in the process. This retreat, driven by desperation, proves to be fatal. Within moments, a Ukrainian operator guides another FPV drone straight into its rear armor. The resulting explosion is so massive that the vehicle is instantly obliterated, debris raining down in all directions. Flames consume the twisted remains, now nothing more than a burning shell. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the assault is still ongoing. One Russian APC manages to reach its intended location, giving the appearance of partial success. But as soon as it arrives, a massive explosion detonates beneath it. The shock wave is caught on drone camera. Metal is flung high into the air, followed by a mushroom cloud of black smoke. The fire rages, devouring the vehicle until only a scorched husk remains. Then comes the next wave. Ukrainian drones swarm into the sky, each one programmed with deadly intent. One by one, they strike Russian vehicles attempting to regroup. A precision-guided drone disables a moving APC. Another drone finishes the job just seconds later, turning it into molten wreckage. The onslaught is ruthless. A new target is identified, a Russian APC moving slowly through a clearing. A Ukrainian drone tracks it with unwavering focus, dives and lands a direct hit, halting it completely. The chaos on the ground is mirrored by the intensity in the control rooms. Each drone pilot working in synchrony, reacting in real time to battlefield changes. By the next morning, the madness continues. Ukrainian artillery units receive fresh intel. More Russian armor is closing in. Without delay, they spring into action. The artillery crew loads shells with practiced speed and launches the first barrage. The shells sail through the air, descending like thunderbolts. The leading Russian APC is obliterated in a single earth-shaking hit. Its ammunition cooks off, creating a chain of blasts that consume nearby equipment. Drone footage captures the aftermath: blackened soil, shredded armor, and the unmistakable glow of burning fuel. More drones are dispatched to confirm the destruction. Another APC, already damaged by shrapnel, is targeted again. Ukrainian gunners don't leave anything to chance. A final surgical strike hits the vehicle, causing it to burst into flames. The fire reaches its internal ammo cache, resulting in a dazzling eruption of fire and flying debris. But this engagement is far from over. Russian forces begin pushing from alternate directions, attempting a pincer attack. Ukrainian intelligence units flag the maneuver quickly, and the defenders respond. One drone operator locks onto a Russian BMP-2 approaching from the flank. The drone barrels downward, scoring a perfect hit on the engine compartment. Flames shoot upward, and the vehicle becomes immobile. Meanwhile, another APC tries to follow, but its path is blocked. One of its own disabled vehicles lies across the road. Ukrainian troops suspect the field is mined, which explains the Russians' hesitation. That momentary pause becomes deadly. A Ukrainian drone emerges from the tree line and strikes the idling tank. Direct hit. The battle becomes increasingly digital. Ukrainian drone pilots now coordinate in teams. While one delivers the hit, the other provides real-time visuals to ground units and artillery. A nearby APC is identified by its movement patterns. Artillery begins to rain down, damaging the vehicle. It limps forward, trailing smoke, trying to flee. But it's already too late. A Ukrainian ATGM is already on the way. The explosion that follows rips the vehicle apart in a spectacular ball of fire. By the end of this engagement, the battlefield is littered with the remains of armored vehicles, each one a testament to Ukraine's resilience and strategic brilliance. From grenadiers on the ground to drone teams in camouflage bunkers, every soldier played a role in turning what could have been a Russian breakthrough into another dramatic failure. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a sweet comment below. Tell us which country you're watching this news from.